This happened back in 2017 when I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida. I've always been a homebody, so when my coworker Jenna, who was about 10 years younger than me, started relentlessly begging me to go out, I kept declining. She and another girl from work, Mira, were persistent though, and after weeks of asking, I finally gave in. I told Jenna I would join them for a night out the following weekend. As the weekend approached, Jenna came to my apartment. She wanted to leave her car there and have me drive, which immediately stressed me out. I had lived in St. Pete for 4 years, but since I rarely left my neighborhood, I knew nothing about local nightlife. The farthest I usually drove was 4 miles to the nearest Walmart. If I went any further, I'd be lost without my GPS. That evening, we got into my car and headed toward Mira's apartment. When we arrived, Mira wasn't quite ready, so we went inside and waited. Once she was ready, all 3 of us piled back into my car. Since I was driving, Jenna had to navigate. We eventually ended up at a busy club. We went inside, found a spot, and ordered some drinks. We hadn't been there long when Jenna said, "Hey, I'll be right back. I see someone I know." She then asked Mira to go with her. I remember feeling a sharp stab of annoyance. Why beg me to come out? Only to leave me alone moments later, but I waited. A few minutes later, Jenna and Mira returned smiling. "My friend bought us around," Jenna announced, handing me a glass. I trusted her. She was my co-worker, so I took the drink as they did theirs. I believe Jenna's friend bought us 2 rounds each. It wasn't long after the 3rd drink that something felt terribly wrong. The room didn't spin, but a wave of thick, unsettling dread washed over me. I turned to Jenna and insisted we have to go now. The next few hours are a blur. I don't remember leaving the club, but apparently we did. The first thing I recall clearly is sitting outside Mira's apartment complex, still in the driver's seat of my car. I heard Jenna and Mira talking, and whatever they said, some combination of words I can't recall to this day, instantly triggered my fight or flight response. I didn't need to understand the words. My gut knew I was in danger. I slammed the car into drive and sped away. Whatever had been slipped into my drink was powerful. I wasn't a lightweight, and I'd only consumed 3 club drinks, which are often watered down. I was driving all over St. Pete, unable to focus, simply trying to figure out how to get home. But my mind was completely scrambled. At one point, I stopped at a red light. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared at my window, and then someone was pulling my car door open. I was in total shock. My car doors automatically locked the second I put the vehicle in gear. I still have no idea how they managed to open it. 2 strange men were actively pulling the door open, and the sight snapped me out of the mental fog just enough for me to hit the gas and flee the intersection. After that moment of sheer terror, the memory vanishes again. The next thing I remember, I was sitting in my car parked near a row of quiet homes. I was staring blankly at my phone, trying desperately to figure out how to operate it. But the drug had made me so paranoid and confused that the simplest action felt impossible. I looked around, saw no one, and convinced myself I was safe for the moment. I reclined the seat and fell into a deep, drug-induced sleep. I woke up around 5 a.m. with the drug wearing off. I was finally able to use my phone. I put on the GPS and drove straight home, collapsing into bed immediately. I woke up again around 11 a.m. to 20 missed calls, mostly from Jenna, but a few from a concerned friend. When I called Jenna back, she was frantic, demanding to know where I went. "What do you mean?" I retorted. "Your friend spiked my drink, and that wasn't sticking around to find out what was going to happen next," I told her. Jenna then let slip a chilling line. where the spiked drinks weren't meant for you. That casual admission was all the confirmation I needed that she was involved. She quickly told me that she would stop by later to pick up her vehicle. Before she arrived, the memory of those two guys opening my door returned with jarring clarity. Had it been a hallucination, or was it real? I went outside to check my car, and there it was. The plastic casing of my driver's side door handle was completely missing. Whoever had been holding on to that handle when I sped away must have ripped it right off. The physical damage confirmed that the terror I felt wasn't a delusion. Someone had tried to get into my car while I was drugged, driving alone, and vulnerable. I was furious that Jenna had put me in such a predicament. I never spoke to her again. The moral of this terrifying story is simple, and it's the only reason I'm still here. Always trust your instincts. Your gut feelings are always right. I'm a teenager that lives in a lively coastal town in a small enough country. It's very popular among tourists during the summer and becomes quiet during the other seasons. The main attraction of our town is the beach that stretches a few kilometers down to these sand dunes that are great for a scenic walk. The hills within are easy to get lost in, but at the same time easy to make your way out of. As if you walk a kilometer in any direction, you're sure to be back on the beach or on the path that leads back to a car park. The walk from this car park is around 15 to 20 minutes, provided you make good pace, so you're never truly isolated there. During the day, you'll always see families with young kids taking a stroll down there, or somebody walking the dog. My point here is that the dunes are known to be safe during the day, and if you get lost in them, you shouldn't panic. This story takes place a few weeks after school started back up, so town is quieter and the evenings grow darker. My friends and I are part of the local scout group. Our group is split into 4 groups, being Beavers for ages 5 to 8, Cubs for 9 to 12, Scouts for 12 to 15, and lastly, Ventures for ages 16 to 18. We meet every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. Whether it be inside or outside, it depends on the time of year. On this night, it was the Scouts' first night back after the summer break. So, as per the tradition, we meet at the car park by the walk to the sand dunes, and the Scouts would walk down to the sand dunes. We would have the older Scouts hike up the biggest of the dunes, and then have the newer Scouts, the 12-year-olds, follow them. So, the older Scouts help the newer Scouts to reach the top, and when they do, they're officially considered Scouts. So, the Scouts set off while me and the other 8 Ventures stayed behind to practice our first aid for about 45 minutes. We did pretty well in that, and we decided we still had time to go to the dunes. The quicker walkers, including myself, reached the dunes first. The tide was fully in, so we weren't able to walk on the beach to the biggest dune, which was known as the Baldy Man. So we just walked through the other hills of the dunes. My friend and I, who I'll call Noah, were set on reaching the Scouts, who at this point had all made it to the top of the Baldy Man. We shouted back to our leader and the other Ventures what we were going to do. And another 2 people decided to join us, who I'll call Thomas and Ewan. The others were a good bit behind, so they went into pairs and split up in checkpoints. So the 4 of the people going to see the Scouts were able to find our way back. So me, Noah, Thomas, and Ewan took off in the near pitch-black dunes, tripping and falling all over the place, going up and down, hill after hill, while scraping our legs on the pointed grass and the occasional bramble. The moon illuminated the silhouette of the Scouts, and we were further away than we thought. We stopped to rest on a ridge where we looked back and saw another 2 Ventures looking towards us. We gave them a wave, and they returned it. I was closing my bottle of water, getting ready to run again, when Thomas shushed us all. He looked mildly concerned at first, but he seemed to shrug it off. We questioned him as to why he shushed us, to which he replied, "Did you hear that?" We shook our heads. So Thomas said he thought he heard something rustling in the bushes, but we put it down to the wind, although it was a very still night. After another 10 minutes, we were on the last hill before we reached the scouts, and we were exhausted. But we pushed through and made it up to them. We said hello to our friends and scouts, welcomed the new scouts, and decided we had to head back, as it was now basically pitch black out. And again, we had no torch. We tumbled down the big hill, catching our footing again on the sand, and we began making our way back to the ventures we saw on the ridge. We ran up and down the hills again until we made out the outline of the ridge we saw the ventures on. They were still there. We were relieved to see them there, even though we knew they would be. Finally, the 4 of us made it up to them. I'll call the 2 Cormac and Alice. Cormac is a big guy muscle-wise and is known in school for his intelligence. He's about 6 feet 3 inches in and looks like he could beat up a bear in a fist fight. Alice is a quiet girl, but very smart, both in school and in social situations. Even without a torch, I could see a look of panic on Cormac's face, along with Alice visibly shaking beside him. "What's wrong?" asked Noah, speaking all our minds. Cormac looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Were you walking around on your own down there?" Pointing down to a clearing in the hills where people might come to have a drink or a smoke. "No, I've been with the others the whole time." "Why?" I replied, feeling my heart rate increase. I think all of us had the same realization at the same time. We could nearly feel each other's blood run cold. Alice and I saw a man with his hood up, dressed in all black, circling this clearing, obviously avoiding us. "We thought it was you at first, but it was too out of character for you," Cormac said, looking at me. I was about to speak, but Cormac kept going. He said, "When we waved at you from the other ridge, we hadn't seen this guy yet. But the minute you were off of it, we saw what I assume is the same guy standing where you stood, looking in your direction." It hit me then, and I had a constant shiver running through me. Thomas must have heard him moving around when we were up there. We were being followed. There's safety in numbers, so the 6 of us made our way down to the clearing where the man was spotted. "He didn't even have a torch," said Alice in a shaky voice. Cormac and Alice rushed toward the scouts to warn their leaders about the situation, while the other 4 of us stayed back and kept watch in the clearing. Cormac and Alex came back quickly after warning the scouts. It was oddly quiet now. We were terrified that this man dressed in all black without a torch circling the place, and, most scary of all, alone in the pitch-black dunes, was going to jump out and attack. Luckily, that never happened. We hurried back to the car park, finding the last 3 ventures along with our leader on the way back, notifying them of the situation. We were nearly out of the dunes when one of the younger scouts let out a scream, which prompted all the others to run. Noah and I, leading the walk back, were the ones who rushed to the kid first. The poor child was in tears, and when we asked him what happened, he pointed to my left. There he was, the same man, standing on a ridge just looking at us. Noah told everyone to run, as he said he saw a knife in the man's hand. The ventures all carried the slower children back to the car park, which was safe as far as we assumed. I never saw the man's face, nor do I plan on finding out who it was. The scouts and ventures were collected by their parents, who I assume all have their versions of the story, but only a handful know the full one. This happened when I was 22 years old. I was working as a bartender at a small dive bar a few blocks from my apartment. By no means a fancy place, just a bunch of locals who would come and get their late-night drinks or to watch whatever games were on. I started recognizing regulars pretty quickly, a lot of them older guys. After my shifts, I usually walked home because it was so close, and sometimes I'd have a couple shots with customers near closing time, so driving wasn't smart. The walk only took about 7 minutes, and I had done it so many times that I never really felt scared before. There was one regular who always made me uncomfortable, though. His name was Jared. I knew this because of his credit card. He looked to be around his late 30s, maybe 38. He had thinning hair and always wore the same brown jacket no matter the weather. He never came in with friends. He would sit at the bar alone and try to talk to me the entire time, showing no interest in any of the sports games I would be on. But he'd usually be there later in the night anyway. He asked personal questions sometimes, and I always kept my answers short and tried to stay polite because that's part of the job. But I avoided encouraging him. One Friday night, he came in like usual around 10 o'clock. He nursed one beer for almost an hour and just watched me while I worked. Not like he was intensively staring at me the entire time, but I'd catch him shooting constant glances at me, and he would look away when I'd notice. Almost every time I walked past, he tried to start a conversation. Near the end of his drink, he asked if I wanted to hang out sometime outside of work. I told him I wasn't interested, and that I like to keep my work and personal life separate. His face changed right away. He forced a smile, threw some cash on the bar, and said, "Yeah, whatever." Then he left without tipping, which he had never done before. I remember feeling relieved he was gone, but also a little uneasy about how fast his mood shifted. My shift ended at midnight. The other bartender came in to take over, and I counted my tips, grabbed my hoodie, and headed out the front door. The street was quiet like it usually was that late. I had just turned onto the next block when I heard someone say my name. It made my stomach drop right away. I turned and saw Jared standing near a lamppost. I didn't even hear him walk up. He gave a small wave and started walking toward me. I stopped but kept some distance. He apologized for storming out earlier and said that he tends to just get nervous. I told him it was fine, but that I really needed to get home. He nodded and said, "I just wanted to ask one more time if I could get your Instagram or Snapchat or something. I promise I won't bother you." I told him I don't use social media. He stared at me for a second, then smiled in a way that made me uncomfortable. He said, "That's weird because I've seen you on Instagram at the bar before." My heart started pounding because now he was directly confronting me. I had no idea how he knew that. I just said, "Please leave me alone," because at this point, he escalated things beyond comfort. He kept smiling and said, "Okay, have a good night." I turned and started walking again, trying to stay calm. After a few seconds, I thought I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I told myself I was being paranoid, but when I glanced back, I saw him walking the same direction about half a block behind me. I sped up a little. He sped up too. I slowed down, and he slowed down. It felt like a sick game, like he was some NPC in a video game programmed to match my speed. I kept walking toward my apartment building, hoping maybe he would turn off somewhere, but he didn't. When I reached my building, I crossed the street instead of going straight to the door. I stopped and turned around. He stopped too. He just stood there under a tree, mostly in shadow. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could still somehow tell he was smiling a little. I yelled, "Why are you following me? I don't want to have to call out for help." He didn't answer. He just stood there stiffly. I blurted out, "My boyfriend lives with me. I'm going inside to get him right now." That was a lie. I lived alone. I turned and hurried to the front door of my building. I hurried and punched in the code for the building. The door buzzed and unlocked for a few seconds. Right as I pulled it open, I heard fast footsteps behind me. I looked back and saw Jared running toward the building. I ran inside and let the door slam shut behind me. I didn't wait to see if it latched fully. I just ran up the stairs to the second floor. My apartment was at the end of the hall. I could hear the main door downstairs push open aggressively, and then footsteps hitting the stairs hard and fast. He made it in. I fumbled with my keys at the door, almost dropping them. I could hear him getting closer, his shoes slamming against each step. I finally got the key in the lock and threw myself inside, slamming the door and locking it just as he reached the hallway. A second later, his whole body smashed into my door. The impact literally shook the whole door and wall. I screamed and backed away, grabbing my phone. He hit the door again, harder this time, like he was trying to break it down. Then I heard another door open in the hallway and a man's voice yell, "What the hell are you doing?" The banging stopped. There was silence for a second, then footsteps quickly moving away. I looked through the peephole and saw my neighbor, an older guy who lived across from me. He was standing in the hall, looking confused and angry. Jared was already halfway down the stairs, not saying a word. My neighbor knocked gently and asked if I was okay. I opened the door a crack, shaking and crying. I told him everything while he stayed in the hallway with me. He said he had heard the banging and thought someone was trying to break in. I called the police, and they came that night and took everything very seriously. I gave them Jared's name from his credit card at the bar, and the building owner pulled the camera footage that showed him running in after me. My boss gave them the bar footage too. The next day, an officer called me and told me they had identified him as Jared Perez, and that detectives were sending the case to the prosecutor. It would be treated as stalking and unlawful entry because he chased me into the building and tried to force my apartment door open. Hearing those words made everything feel even more real, but also a slight bit reassuring. I went to the courthouse the next day and filed for a restraining order. I had to tell a judge everything that happened, and they looked at the police report and the security video. The judge approved a temporary restraining order right away, and police served him with it soon after. I was told the prosecutor was moving forward with charges related to him trying to break into my apartment. I still worked at the bar for a while after that, but I stopped walking home alone at night. Even with the court order and the charges, I felt scared every time I came back to my building. I would check over my shoulder the whole walk and rush inside as fast as I could. Nothing like that ever happened again, but I never forgot this incident.